Hello everybody, welcome to Glass Half Dead. I'm Andy. This is the #1 channel for Kill Team in the entire internet, unless you are aware of the rest of the internet, obviously. Today I want to tell you everything you need to know to stop Kill Team from being a game of gotchas. All the questions you need to ask before the game starts, in deployment, and then going into the game itself, so that you never have to deal with the gotcha again. Although also, if you do have to deal with the gotcha again, how to accept the gotcha, move on, and still potentially even win the game. Let's start with an obvious one. Andy, are you really saying that yes, Kill Team is a game of gotchas? Yes, I am. However, that doesn't have to be a negative, and it doesn't have to mean exactly what you think it means. In Kill Team, there are two ways to be either underpowered or overpowered. This can be with a very simple thing, natural durability, just the stats on your data sheet. Yes, Kill Team is a lethal game, but obviously there's a huge difference in lethality to a Space Marine versus to a regular dude. The second way to be underpowered or overpowered is shenanigans. These are the ploys, these are the natural abilities that you have that you tend to play at a certain time. In general, when it comes to gotchas, we would say that these more elite teams, the more naturally durable teams that overpower you or are underpowered themselves via their normal stats. And if you were to add shenanigans on top of that, you get something that is too overpowered. This is why we might look at, say, Warp Coven or Legionary, who have natural durability and shenanigans. That's generally a bad mix without having to take a hit to your stat line. Much like many of Games Workshop games, Kill Team is designed around having a very simple, slimline core rule set. It then expands from that core rule set. This means that if you know the core rules intimately, inside and out, there will still be things in the game that don't make any sense to you. This is what leads to gotchas in the game of Kill Team. A quick note, there is of course a big difference between a player error and a gotcha. Player errors are brilliant, and we should try our absolute best in casual games and in tournament games to force player error, proving that you are the better general, not the person that knows more rules. A great way to add this into your games is of course time pressure, but that's a video I've talked about in the past, not discussing that here. Player error good, gotchas bad. For example, a player error would basically be defined as a core rule that you temporarily forget because you're focused elsewhere. A great example is me in one of my practice games recently. I decided to charge a stronghold door and I wanted to attack because I knew that I would kill them in one hit. However, when you charge a stronghold door, the enemy gets to fight first because they're inside a stronghold, so he killed me. I was like, ah, yeah, I knew that was a rule, I forgot. It changed everything, and looking back on it, it was a great opportunity to learn and improve my gameplay. An unforced player error is really fun and good. I didn't ask for a take back, I accepted it, it was my mistake. Making mistakes is good. Gotchas are kind of the other way round. It could be an exact same scenario. I think I've got the kill, I charge. If you read the core rules, there is nothing there that implies that what they're about to do could ever be done. You just have to know the specific rule that your enemy is about to play and that they have access to this rule. You have to know everything about the other team. And they have the ability to fight first, much like when I charged that stronghold. I knew they could fight first, but when I charge a random recruit warrior, I am fully unaware that they have a ploy that lets them fight first. Kill Team is a game about breaking the core rules. Because the core rules are so slimlined, if we didn't break the core rules, it would be a really boring game. It is also absolutely insane to expect everybody to know every single team. There are simply too many rules to know in the game. And that's fine, we can get around this ad hoc. Let's discuss. So let's go down our list of questions that you need to ask before a game, during deployment, and then during a game so that you don't get gotcha'd. Oh, but you know what, very quickly before we do that, a quick little bit of, I don't know, life advice on gotchas in games, Kill Team specifically, obviously. This is just a little anecdote. I always got really frustrated by gotchas and perceived unfairness in the game. And that's because I feel like, you know, playing a game, a war game, a game of Kill Team is a big investment of my time, my patience, everything, right? I did a lot to get to the table. And having something happen that I don't even know can occur feels a little bit unfair. And that's because I feel like it's a competitive game. We're all trying to win. That's the point of it. And I have had my win stolen from me just because I don't happen to know the 2,000 total individual rules within Kill Team. That sucks. 100% fully agree that was how I viewed it. And there's obviously still a part inside of me that still views it that way. However, going forwards, something that has allowed me to kind of accept gotchas and accept the way that Kill Team works is a little bit more, I'm not really there to win, but just because one enemy has an interrupt that lets them fight first, or I've won initiative and taken it and they can stop my guy from activating first and I have to do something else on the board. And yes, it's entirely possible that interrupt changes not just the action and the activation but the entire outcome of the game. Yes, you're there to win, but winning isn't the actual goal, if that makes sense. The more I play, the more I learn, the more I have to accept that actually winning's kind of irrelevant, for me personally at least. I'm not trying to top tournaments. I just want to play the game out, and then the best bit for me is talking about that specific game afterwards. And if that means I'm going to be really salty to my opponent, say, yeah, I didn't like that actually, and you know, I wish I'd known that, and then I would have done it, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? That's my enjoyment. I enjoy talking about it. And if that means I'm talking about an interrupt I didn't know about, or I'm talking about a crazy dice roll, or a brilliant strategy that I or them did with or without that interrupt, that gotcha, that's okay. So what is a gotcha, in case you missed it in that huge ramble, so that we know what this list is going to be? A gotcha is a thing that can occur in the game that if you know the core rules, you aren't aware can happen. The absolute core of a gotcha, in general, is going to be something that changes the dice maths in the game. A fight first completely changes how a fight is going to work. It might be a hit twice, it might be a crit and then fall back. It might be the ability to fall back, it might be the ability to do damage when somebody falls back. But it can also extend to, can I shoot you at all? So seek light could be considered a gotcha. If you move on to a vantage point and you don't know your opponent has seek light, suddenly, where you think you're completely safe, they can shoot you. And that is ultimately dice maths. And in fact, if we ignore dice for a moment, the ability to shoot where you shouldn't be able to shoot changes the only thing in the game you actually have true ultimate 100% control over, your movement, which is almost a bigger gotcha than dice maths. Okay, let's get into list selection. This is before deployment. You get to the table, you're going to be selecting your operatives, your equipment, your tac op, all that stuff. What do you need to ask to be able to select those three things? The thing you're really checking here is, can you modify my abilities? So the two big ones to ask are, can you stop rerolls? And can you ignore piercing? This is primarily going to change what gunners you're going to bring and guns you might want to take on weapons, okay? If they ignore piercing, you don't really need your plasma gun, you can take a flamer instead. Or maybe then you don't want your leader to have a plasma pistol because that's now useless and you want the bolt pistol instead. Likewise, can they turn off rerolls? This is going to affect not only in the game do you need to be spending CP to get rerolls, but also perhaps you have one type of operative that is good because they get balanced and relentless and ceaseless on their weapons. But if they turn that off, well, suddenly it's kind of a bad model and you want to take something else instead that is naturally good instead of good because of rerolls. Also note, just in case, there are other gotchas in the game that will affect what you want in all of these stages. However, I deliberately took out all of the gotcha questions to ask if there's only like 2 teams that do it. There's 36 teams. There's no point asking every single team, hey, can you do this one really niche thing that actually I know only Inquisition and Hyrotech can do? That has to become specific knowledge, not general knowledge. It's fine. With the lists and the tac ops and the equipment selected, we go into deployment. What questions do you need to ask now? The general kind of overall concept you're asking here is, can you remove my defense? First question is, of course, do you have any seek and seek light? As already discussed, this is going to define where you can move and where is safe to move to in turn 1. Because yes, vantage points effectively give you seek light, and so you're looking out for vantage points, but if they just have a sniper that can just give itself seek light natively, that's really bad. You then need to be aware not just of the vantage points, but also where that particular operative is. In a very similar vein, do you have any ignore obscuring? This generally isn't actually going to come up that much in turn 1, but turn 2 and onwards, it will still define where you've moved in the turns and what you need to be aware of. And then a really big one, but also very, very basic, do you have any blast/torrent? Because in general, that defines if you are allowed to bunch up or spread out. And then when you do have to bunch up behind certain pieces of terrain, you have to know where the enemy's blast or torrent weapons are. Losing one model is part of the game. Losing two models is very bad for you. We then get to the overall gotchas, and the real question you're asking here is, as mentioned before, can you change my dice maths? Can you break the core of the game? Let's start with kind of the most obvious one, and also kind of the broadest. Do you have any interrupts? This could be, do they interrupt your activation? This could be, do they interrupt your action? If you move in a certain place, does that allow them to interrupt things that you are doing in a way that, from reading the core rules, you literally don't know can ever occur? This is very important, and as long as you ask this and you get answered correctly by your opponent, you're good to go. This is kind of a subsection to interrupt. This is, do you have any fights first? Again, this is just something that is going to completely change your mental thinking when you're thinking of what you can do. It changes what you do from an offensive action to a defensive action, and if they catch you out on that, you're going to be the kind of person that starts making shorts videos saying how everything's broken in the game. Again, in a very similar vein, do you have an ability to hit twice? A hit twice could be hit, or it could be when I crit I block, or it could be when I hit I can then run away. Any sort of two actions combined into one, again, completely changes the dice maths. Sometimes this can even be combined with fights first, which just means they win the fight. And had you known they had that, you wouldn't just recalculate the odds. You would say, oh, I literally can't charge you, then I have to deal with you in shooting. Fine. But if you don't know that, you will immediately lose a model. Additionally, you need to know, do you have Just a Scratch? Just a Scratch is an orc ploy where you get to ignore a normal damage for a CP. Some models even have this natively on their datasheet. If they do have that, it will generally be once per game, whereas of course a ploy is once per turn. You need to know whether or not the enemy has this ability. It changes melee, essentially giving them a hit twice for a CP. It's the same effect as long as you don't have crits. Or it changes your probabilities when shooting as well, because suddenly that big crack grenade you've got, well, you need a whole additional hit just to get them down 1 health. It's a big deal. Any sort of ignore damage is important, but most things in the game will be -1 damage. They won't generally be ignore a whole dice. That's why you ask, do you have a Just a Scratch? Okay, that's the full list. If you ask all of those and you play correctly with that knowledge, you will not get gotcha'd. However, that's very difficult. To ask those 9 questions and then play well with your own team is a huge ask. So what do? You ask questions constantly. Yes, you ask those questions at the beginning, but then you keep asking. Absolute top tier players do this constantly in a game. They will always ask, what does that guy do? What does this guy do? Do you have this ability? If I do that, is the fight going to work the way I think it's going to work? These are all totally fine things to ask. Kill Team is a game of open information. It is assumed that you have full access to every single piece of information in the game. Your opponent is not allowed to not tell you. They will have told you everything at the start of the game that you're supposed to know. You will have asked everything. Cool. You're going to forget it, and that's fine. So the absolute key to how the game should be played, are you ready? This is the big one. Talk with intent. If I move up to this piece of vantage terrain and I say, I have moved up here, I am behind light terrain, I am safe. Having a verbal stream of consciousness as I play the game, that's what I'm thinking. I'm making very sure that I say it. If they then do not say, actually, I have seek light, you can validly say, but if you remember, I said I was safe there. You didn't stop me. That is then when you would be allowed a take back. Because that's totally fine, because essentially what happened there is they did not communicate their own rules to you, which is not allowed, which is an unfair advantage. However, if I just silently move my model there is no way for my opponent to know that the reason I moved there is because I believed I was safe behind light terrain. Why would they just say every time I move, don't forget I have seek light, don't forget I have seek? No, you need to prompt them with your verbal stream of consciousness. Now, if you're not good at that and you don't want to constantly be talking about every single thing you do, I would recommend that the time you do it is when you charge. And as long as you say, I'm charging with my model, it's a normal fight action, I'm going to fight first. As long as you say that, they have to prompt you if that is not how it works. Again, I would very, very, very strongly recommend that just as part of being a good opponent, You get into that stream of consciousness. You say exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it as you go. You're not revealing your grand plan here, okay? You're just saying, I move here and I am safe because I have light terrain. And also, I'm going to check your threat range. Okay, we're good. You're not saying, I'm moving here because I'm behind light terrain and I'm checking your threat range and next turn I'm going to do this thing so you know. Doesn't matter. Not how the game's played. You don't need to expand on what you're doing. You simply say what you're doing, check the occasional threat range, confirm I'm safe here because your max charge range is this, correct? They say, yes, I agree. Boom. You know everything you need to know to play Kill Team. Congrats. You will never be gotcha'd again. Apart from the times when you are gotcha'd again. Actually, sorry about that. And unfortunately, you have to learn that through trial and error. But as I said, just be cool with it. And just keep in mind that the goal of the game, yes, is to win. But the reason you're there is not to win. The reason you're there is to enjoy a social experience across the board from somebody else, using Kill Team to facilitate a social interaction over a cool, nerdy, shared hobby, and then you chat about what happened. That's how I view the game. That's why I'm okay with being gotcha'd. So yeah, I guess if you ask all of those questions, you'll be safe from now on. But yeah, this was really just a hidden message so that you understand that actually the goal of the game is different to the reason you're there. As long as you don't conflate the two, you are going to be having a much happier, more enjoyable life in general, but a gaming experience as well. Thanks for watching. Stay hydrated. Finger guns. Bye.